All right, round two. I ended up with a phone call and I had to pause and everything. So, good evening. Again, this is February 23rd, 2026. And it's a late recording because, again, it was a big jump. So, it was pretty much like doing Deuteronomy from the first chapter all the way through the 29th. So, I was able to read some, I had to listen to some, and then I stopped and I was able to finish the reading to be able to get on and share with you guys. Again, it's one of those things where a lot of the stuff is redundant because the first couple of chapters is basically, Moses talking to the people about what all they had gone through because it was one of those things that a lot of things was being done because God wanted them to remember. This was all about like actually creating a covenant with a group of people. And so he basically went over how God brought them out of Egypt and they wandered. But then one of the things that was kind of good that I really appreciated was even when they talked about like things that God had established beforehand, like when he talked about the land that had been promised to Esau and his descendants, the land that had been promised to Lot and his descendants. It was one of those things that once God promised something, it was something that stood and endured like throughout time. So even though like they were coming and they were wandering, certain things had already been established. And that's one of the things, once God establishes something, it's meant to be eternal. And he walked them through, and and one of the things that it kind of opens up is because pretty much it was like normally it only takes 11 days to travel from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. But here they were 40 years later. And that was like kind of how it started because it was one of those things where 40 years was kind of what it took for God to actually establish his covenant because God was so personable about everything that he was doing with them and everything that he was establishing for them. But God is always a God of order and he's always going to have a standard and he's always going to expect that you know what his standard is. But I'm going to go ahead and jump to 29, but actually right before 29 and 28, God was just showing people like the difference between living a life of obedience and living a life of disobedience. It was one of those things like he promised that if you live this life of obedience and obey all of his commands, it was almost like the windows of heaven would be open for you. I know we get that scripture a lot and we see it like later on. It's one of the favorite scriptures that a lot of people use. But it just goes to show like it is a promise of God and that's something that we want over our lives. We want for his window of blessings to be open. So it's always like we want to strive to like just be obedient to his word. Now it was very specific when he gave them the things to do, like as far as the sacrificing and if you did this, like how you should treat your family, how you treat women, men, the differences, like a slave, a foreigner. It was like everybody that was going to be part of yeah, of this was going to have a place and everybody was going to have a responsibility in a way that they should be treated because that was one of the things that it shows that God cared about everybody, not just the people who were his people, but the people who they invited in with him. But then it also established him, and I'm trying to remember, yeah, when it got to chapter 29, and it was almost like Moses started the recap again and he was talking about the last 40 years. But one of the things that was so good, and it was saying that it says, but to this day the Lord has not given you minds that understand, nor eyes that see, nor ears that hear. For 40 years I led you through the wilderness, yet your clothes and sandals did not wear. You ate no bread and drank no wine or other alcoholic drink, but he provided for you so that you would know that he was the Lord your God. Like all of these things was removed. So when God showed up, it was going to be undeniable that that was him showing up and he was answering in a way that only he could answer. It wasn't going to be anything else that anybody could attest to or attribute it to because it was so important that they understood that he was making a covenant for them like they were his chosen people. And that was what it had went on in that chapter. And it was saying like the purpose of everything was to establish them as his people and confirm that he is your God, just as promised, and as he swore to your ancestors. And we hear Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like everything that was going on, it was building something, and it was building something that was to be repeated, told, celebrated. It was like God was a God that wanted to continually be involved with his people and to continually be praised and and have relationship with his people. It was something that was meant to be continuous. So even though they was going through all of this now, it was something that was going to be discussed forever because that was going to be a sign that they was his covenant. And that's one of the things that this chapter was also helping us see, because it was talking about how, God, what was unacceptable to him. And he was like, as you go and you go into these other places are going to have their own gods. They're going to have their own ways. And this was something that was unacceptable for them to bring that culture into his covenant. And it showed that he was a jealous God, that was not something that was going to be allowed or acceptable in any way, and that it would have like severe consequences. And he looked at it as, this would be something that would show that they had abandoned the covenant. And so this is where we are in chapter 29. So today is going to be a little bit short, but again, I just encourage, like, even though this is the first time I'm doing the Bible in this order. I don't know if I've said that already. I might say it a couple more times before we actually get through it, because again, this is just February. So we got a couple of more months of getting together and being able to do this. But I just really like the opportunity to have this time with God. Like again, I know I stress that I do other studies, I have other things going on, but actually taking this walk from beginning to the end is a big deal for me. And one of the things that I'm looking, because even when it was talking, when it was wandering, and I had went on Google and I was actually looking up the different maps, because the maps was pretty much showing them how God led them up to where he wanted them to actually enter into the promised land. But when they lost that part, that they would not, that generation would not be able to enter, that then they had to turn back around and now they wandered. And so sometimes it's like when you read something and it's like, you're trying to get an idea of what it actually is, but to actually be able to go and to see it on a map is something that might bring it more to life to you. And so use like different tools out of there. Like, some people might want to go a little bit deeper, and I encourage it, because it's almost like going deeper might make it mean a little bit more to you. And I know that was something that I was really interested in, to see how they moved about on the map. And so that was just something that I was able to add and do a little extra when it came to how talking about how they wandered. And then, like, the way it opened up saying that this was something that should have taken 11 days, but again, they wandered for 40 years. So that's all I have for today. It was a lot to cover, and a brief explanation, because again, it's not really like a teaching, it's just me going through it and sharing my thoughts. And hopefully one day I'll start getting some, because I have one faithful person who gives me a call, and I love it. I love it. I love it. And I appreciate it, because, it's always better when you have somebody that you do it with. So I pray that you guys have a blessed evening, and we will pick up tomorrow with the next chapter. I think we're not going to do any big jumps immediately. So I think we got a couple of chapters to get through the next couple of days. So I should be able to get on a little bit earlier. So I pray that everybody has a good evening.